Thank you so much, Anton Isa. I'm so sorry if I butchered that, for suggesting this video. It probably would have been way further down the line if you hadn't said anything. So, if you like this video or are excited for it, thank them. Also, I want to give a huge shout out to... Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, but I have no idea how to pronounce your name. Here's their username on screen along with their channel in the description below, but I just wanted to thank you so much. Like, you don't understand how much it means to me when you comment and are supportive of all my stuff all the time. This person is always one of the first people to comment on anything I put out, and they're always so kind about it. Thank you so much. Please make sure to go check out their channel and show them some love. They really deserve it. Thank you again. Anyway, let's get on to the video. Hey guys, we're back with some more Rise of the TMNT action. The reason that this video is so delayed was because I wanted to take a step back from Rise of the TMNT. I wanted to allow myself room to breathe from it since I literally had my nose stuffed in it for a few good weeks. I wanted to separate myself from it so that I could have a fresh perspective on it. Honestly, I needed a break. Now, don't get me wrong, I love this show and I love the characters in the show. But after sifting through the episodes that much, you get a little burnt out. So I wanted to do some other characters, which I did, and I really enjoyed doing so. But I also began to think about it. It wasn't fair that I gave the turtles all an analysis but ignored the rest of the characters. So I believe that I'm going to give all the characters a chance to shine. The more important ones at least. I'm going to be starting off with Splinter because he's been suggested and asked for. Now, I'm going to keep this rather frank because I plan on bringing it up in a future video. But Rise Splinter was kind of a bum at first. We hardly ever got to see him, and the first time we saw him was insulting. He's played off as a joke, and that made a lot of people angry, myself included. I wanted to believe in this show and this character, but the way they were representing him made that hard. Especially after the 180 personality change from the last version of him. To a lot of people, it was whiplash. This character that they had cared for and respected was turned into a joke. Nothing more than a gag. Because that's what cartoons want these days, isn't it? Some sort of gag. But, for those who stuck through with the show and gave Splinter a chance, there was a realization that this character wasn't as shallow as we had once believed. Splinter is an unintentional father of 4 boys. He ended up having to raise them almost out of nowhere. His life got turned upside down in a matter of seconds. Not only did he have 4 children created from the mutation of his DNA, he was also now a mutated rat. If you take a second to consider how out of pocket this would have been, you begin to realize the choices he made weren't so unbelievable. Splinter himself is a bad father. I'm sorry, I said it. I'm sorry if you love Splinter and are willing to fight for the death over him, but I want you to take a step back for a second. Why do you love Splinter? It's because he's flawed. First things first, when we are introduced to the turtles, we see them out doing their own thing. Almost as if they have no curfew, and more or less like they have no rules from Splinter. The first time we meet him is nearly halfway into the first episode, and he's shown as a bum. A lazy person who cares nothing about anything. We also learn fairly early on that the Turtle Brothers get little to no training, which implies the fact that Splinter hasn't been helping them. Even from the first episode, we are able to gain this much information. So if you can sum him up in one episode, what is the point of doing an analysis on him? Oh, you poor ignorant fools. I'm just kidding. I can say that without a doubt, Splinter is the character who changes the most throughout the series. Well, maybe aside from Draxum, but meh. And the interesting thing is, I'm not entirely sure I can pinpoint the exact episode he changes. meaning that it's more of a gradual change instead of a complete 180. Think about it. Seriously. At the beginning of the series, we hardly see him at all, aside from a joke or two, but by the end, he's more or less there all of the time. That's where I want to bring up times before the series started. We learn pretty quickly that Splinter was not around as much as he should have been for his kids. In that absence, Raph is forced into the role of the leader, much without his consent on the whole thing, but he couldn't let his younger brothers fend for themselves. Splinter's own father was extremely strict and controlling over Splinter's life, and what he wanted him to be and do in the future. This is something that I believe shaped the way that Splinter looks both at fathership and the act of being a parent in general. He didn't want to be as controlling as his father was, so instead he distanced himself from them. Because he was expected to be something that someone else decided him to be, he wanted to run away and to escape into a world that was his own. When he got his sons, it was so out of left field that it was almost like a punch to the gut. He wasn't expecting to be a father and have responsibility, especially over someone else's lives. I believe that this really put into perspective how not ready he was for this. Not only that, but if you're not nose deep in Rise of the TMNT like I am and have watched it, you have hopefully noticed that Splinter hardly ever calls them by their names. He calls them by the colors of their masks, and in turn dissociates them in a way. If you think about it, it's a lot like what his mother did to him back in the day. She had to leave him for her duty. Duty. To him, that was the cruelest thing she could have done. Sure, later on he may end up understanding that it's more or less for the family, but that doesn't matter when you're a kid. It doesn't change the fact that it stung in the first place. It stung, and he was never able to fully recover from that, as we see him dissociate himself from his own sons. I believe that this, in a sense, forms the way he is as a father. Think about it. If he doesn't form close bonds with his sons, he won't be as hurt when they inevitably leave him. Because that's his biggest fear, that he's going to be left alone. Despite us seeing him actively avoid his family and actively try to be alone, think about it. He is trying to prove that he doesn't have to be what his father wants him to be, but that doesn't mean that he wants to lose him or has any intention of losing him. We can see him regretting his decisions already in the memory of his father attempting to get him to return to his family. He loves his family, but that doesn't mean he wants to be controlled by them. I will say that it was irresponsible of him to leave his children alone for so long, but in the end he did end up helping them through everything and realizing what his father was trying to get at. That this was about more than just him. It was about keeping his family safe and having them be there for another day. Although I disagree with Splinter for staying out of his sons' lives until his destiny called for it, I respect him for jumping in and trying to make it better. I do think this was done in a rushed manner that made him seem suddenly obsessed out of nowhere about a destiny that he couldn't give a rat's crack about. Get it? Rat and crack, because this is child-friendly. Anyway, something that I noticed and found particularly interesting was how many episodes revolve around him and April in particular. She literally gets the most time with him, and he's not even her real father. Like, what? I can't be the only one a little appalled and confused about this whole situation. He spends more time with a child that is not his own than his actual children. He spends more time with April than he does with his other children all combined. All of the others at least get an episode with him. But now hold on that thought. What about Raph? Splinter spends the least time with Raph and has interacted the least with him. To my knowledge, there is not an episode with Raph and Splinter, whereas all the others got at least one. Why is that? Well, my best bet is the fact that he's the oldest and that he got stuck with the responsibility that Splinter would not take. They are so different, to the point where they repel each other. The only time we see those two alone together are in Mrs. Cuddles, which is saying enough by itself, and in a vision that Raph has. Yeah, that's right. A vision. Not an actual conversation between the two, and how Splinter has hurt and pushed his responsibilities onto his son. No, it's a vision about Splinter telling him stuff that doesn't make any sense to Raph. Not only that, when Splinter decides that it's time for him to fix what he's been slacking on, he immediately goes to the old ways of doing things, which is actually rather harming for the individual. And I will actually go over that more in my big Rise of the TMNT video because I have a lot to say about that. You must shed the skin of your former selves. He tells them that they have to stop being themselves in order to be Hamato. To be able to be connected to the family, you must shed your individuality. Which actually rubs me the wrong way. He spends his whole life avoiding doing this for himself, and then, because a threat has appeared and is seemingly unbeatable, he goes to his ancestors for help, even though he has ignored all thought and meaning behind them until that moment. Admittedly, he was in the right for not wanting to lose his individuality, but I believe that there were better ways to go about trying to stop the Foot Clan instead of this. And the situation was hardly talked about in general. So, as I said before, I'm not going to talk about this too much because I want to be able to rant in the future. Splinter is afraid of being alone. Does that sound familiar to you? If you have watched my Raph video, it should at least ring a bell. Splinter is so afraid of being alone and not being accepted that he casts himself away from his family in order to make it less painful when it happens. Raph is afraid of being alone because without holding the responsibility of a situation, what good is he? Raph has to do it all. Splinter is afraid to do anything. If you look at these two arcs, they more or less mirror each other in a sense. They are one and the same whilst being the opposite in progressions of each other. They are the same arc, but in a different lens. When you get put into a leadership role, you will do one of two things. You will either accept the fact that you are in charge and that everything depends on you, and you will continuously take that burden no matter how much it hurts you. Or, you will deny the fact that you are a leader, you are not fit for it, and it would be better off in someone else's hands. Because you can't accept the idea of failure. If you fail at this, it will be solely your fault. You could be the one to get the others hurt if you take on this leadership role. You are not good enough to be a leader, so you tell yourself that. You convince yourself that you are not enough. You convince yourself that you are alone, even when you have a loving family behind you. If you can see yourself relating to Splinter, I want you to consider these thoughts for a second and wonder why you feel this way. Why do you feel like you are not fit to be a leader? Because you've messed up before? Because the thought of all that pressure just stresses you out and you don't want to be responsible for failure? Why are you afraid? Don't let your fear control you. No matter how much you think you've messed up or you're unredeemable, just remember that there will always be people out there willing to help you. Your family cares a lot about you. And if you find yourself in a predicament that they don't, then there are always people out there that are willing to help you or care for you. If you're feeling lost or like you haven't done enough, remember that you being here is enough. You are not alone, and you should never have to be. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed that video. It was pretty last minute since I had homework yesterday and I was supposed to have the script written by yesterday, but I ended up having to write the rest today. I think I did pretty good though. I'm pretty happy with this video and I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. With that being said, I hope you all have a nice night. Please remember to like and subscribe, and I will see you all later.